This is the book of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 6. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Matthew 24 and 7. For nation shall rise against nations, and kingdom against kingdoms. And there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. Luke 21 and 9. But when ye shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must come to pass, but the end is not by and by. Revelations 11 and 14. The second woe was past, and behold, the third woe coming quickly. Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem, Wakakadash. Double honors to the elders, apostles of Great Millstone, preaching His word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim, scattered through the four corners of the globe, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim, that be like unto the speckled bird, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. I say shalom to the Akim out there. And this is a quick sit-down lesson in the news on June the 28th, 2022 at 1:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on this Tuesday afternoon. And through the spirit, power, grace, and mercy of Yahweh Yahushua. And this is a news article from the Jerusalem Post. And this was on June the 27th, 2022. And the highlight of this news article, and it reads from the Jerusalem Post, it's U.S.-Israeli joint aerial training took place off the coast of Israel. The U.S. and the Israeli Air Forces conducted a joint aerial training off the coast of Israel on Monday. The with Israeli refueling American F-35S, which arrived from over the Mediterranean, according to the KAN News. So yeah, you've been seeing these increases of these nations doing military exercise drills, joint exercise drills with their allies to protect themselves from their adversaries. Nations been doing military missiles launch, the hypersonic missiles, long range and the short range, and the ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile training as well too. So it been a lot of military drills and military training and civilization training with a couple of weeks ago with Israel doing the military training against Iran. And I believe it was about last week, I believe I did a video on about United States and Israel doing some type of simulation type against Israel, and the United States helped them assist with that. So that's growing tensions in the Middle East, growing tensions between Israel and Iran, growing tensions between Western countries. That's all against Russia, because they fully support Ukraine, with the United States constantly, consistently adding military aid, giving them countless millions to billions of dollars of military aid, and from Western countries and NATO. So the tensions increasingly, and I believe there was a recent military strike, a military airstrike from Russia. I believe it was yesterday at a shopping mall. It was like 1,000 people in there, and on the Russian side they did like a missile strike on that. I believe it was like 8 people had died and 52 had got injured. So the war over there in Ukraine is consistently increasing and intensifying, So that goes to show you what the increase of wars and rumors of wars, because the wars and rumors of wars is consistently increasing, and the tensions in the Middle East is gonna increase right back up as well too, you know, because like I brought out those scriptures, Revelations 11 and 14, second woe was past, and behold, the third woe coming quickly, you know. And then nations shall rise against nations and kingdom against kingdoms. You should hear Luke 21 and 9. I brought that out as well too, along with it, roughly paraphrase. You should hear, commotions of wars, the increase of the different kingdoms going against one another and different nations against one another as well too, So that's why I brought out those scriptures and correlates to this as well too. So, the tensions between the nations is gonna increase even more and more. But you're gonna have times where it kind of cool off a little bit, but it's gonna escalate even more, in the last days of these nations are constantly, consistently going towards one another. And especially with the, even if, I said this previous times, even if the U.S. and Iran might potentially show more progress of the revival of the 2015 nuclear deal, that if they have huge significant progress on that, and I believe it was another article too, I believe, was it Russia? I believe it was either Russia or Iran. They had used more economic sanctions against against the United States and Western countries, and then they used the sanctions towards Joe Biden and his wife as well too, because Russia, they countered the United States and Western allies as well too. That fully support, Ukraine, the Western allies with the United States and NATO, because the United States keep on putting these heavy sanctions on Russia. That's another act of war, because it could be many different ways of war, and it don't have to be like physically. It can be verbally at times. And it could be a financial standpoint as well too. That's a different acts of war as well too. In many different categories, you can put it that way. So that goes to show you, with the increase of wars and commotion between these nations. Because I guess I kind of believe that Russia had got tired, even though they don't really care much, because they have like different alternatives to like help them create oil production, even though they rank second in oil production. They find ways to like have a balanced stability of economics for their country and their allies that fully support them, But, I guess President Vladimir Putin, I guess he's saying like, hey, if you're going to use economic sanctions on me and my country, I'm going to use economic sanctions right back on you and your allies that support you. So that's why they put heavy sanctions once again for the second time on the United States. Because Vladimir Putin feel like, hey, you use sanctions on me and my people. Hey, I'm going to use economic sanctions on your Western allies and your country as well too. And Pacific people as well too, So, that goes to show you with the increase of economic wars, verbal wars towards one another of the different nations and different kingdoms. and it's going to get very physical as well too, because we're entering in those times. So yeah, this tension between so that goes to show you the increase of the nations rise against nations and the kingdom against kingdoms as well too. So once again, you're gonna have that increase between Iran and Israel, the United States sending military aid and military and economic sanctions towards Russia and its allies as well too. And then you got tensions increasing in eastern Ukraine. When it's going to be more deployment of more troops. I believe NATO, they was discussing, because I did a video on it as well too. We're going to have NATO. They're going to have a full deployment. Potentially, I think they said it was like it's going to be the biggest military deployment since the Cold War, I believe. So that lets you know that the tensions increasing, heightening up to a good level. It's going to increase more and more between the nations and between the different kingdoms as well too, because you're going to have more continual escalations between the nations, between the Syrian border, the Israel border, and the Syrian border. You're going to have more increase of Israeli aggression in Syria, because you got Russia stationed down there in Syria as well too, and many other associates as well too, which is Iran-backed allies as well too. So you're going to have a lot of tensions increasing on the Syrian border and the Israel border and Lebanon border as well too, throughout all in the Middle East, and that's one of the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the Valley of Decision, the decision of Yahweh thy power, and he's going to cause all the enemies come draw near in the Middle East, and we're going to see that, because we are definitely in the stages of that, with these nations going to draw up together. They all going to gather together in the Middle East, in the Valley of Decision, Yahweh's the decision, in the Middle East, the Battle of Jehoshaphat, the Valley of Decision, as we're getting into that. It's coming very soon as well too. So with that, I hope this quick sit-down lesson was edifying. In the news on June the 28th, 2022, basically, it's like an update of the wars and rumors of wars increasing, and the kingdom against kingdoms increasing even more in the last days, and it's going to increase more than ever, once it start back to heat up again, because the war drums are beating, and it's going to increase more and more. And I believe another thing too, I believe it was two countries, they had signed an application to join BRICS or something like that, because you already have, NATO and its allies going against, Russia and its allies. So, it's a lot of tension stirring up between these nations from an economic standpoint to a verbal standpoint. And it's going to come to a physical standpoint as well, too, because we are entering those stages. That's why you're seeing these nations gearing up, preparing for war. And then let the weak say I am strong. With these nations with the military training, joint exercise training, military simulations, attack type training as well too, So with that, I hope this was edifying once again, like I mentioned, through the spirit, power, grace, and mercy of Yahweh Yahushua. And first and foremost, I'd like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem, Wakakadash. Double honors to the elders, apostles of Great Millstone, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim, scattered to the four corners of the globe. Scattered through the four corners of the globe, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim, that be like unto the speckled bird, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And once again, shalom to the Akim, scattered through the four corners of the globe, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And until next time, I will say shalom and a ball.